Hi, Malika. Thank you for turning in the Unit 2 test. I just want to make sure that you're aware that I don't have your Unit 1 test yet, and so I need for you to hand that in before you go on to Unit 3, please, okay? I just wanted to go through your test with you. There was a couple of corrections. I thought it would be easier if I just explained them and showed you how to do them correctly on a video. So you did great on the first part. This is all great. And this is great down to here. And sorry, I was just looking, I think I went a little bit too far there with B. Okay, so what we need to do is have a look at part B. We're going to start there. And I just want to show you a couple of corrections, okay? This triangle would be best solved using Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. As a matter of fact, both of these triangles would best be solved that way. The reason for that is that you're not given any angles. And so without knowing for sure any angles in your triangles, using trigonometry is sort of more work than it would be to just use the Pythagorean theorem to solve for your unknown side. The hypotenuse is c. So in the first question, when you're trying to find x, you would do 34.2 squared plus 28.3 squared equals x squared. And then you would just work that out on your calculator and take the square root of your answer, and that's x. You cannot use tan to find a side. You can only use tan to find an angle. All right, so don't use trig ratios when you're trying to find a side. Now, over here for number 2, the same situation is happening. You're trying to use the sine in order to find x, and x is a side, not an angle. And so I need for you to use the Pythagorean theorem here, and in this case, because you're trying to find a short side, you would use x squared equals 17.3 squared, 17.3 squared plus 12.7 squared. So, going down to the next question, 2 things that are wrong with the triangle. You can use sine and cosine, and you're right about number 2. The hypotenuse should be the bigger and longer side, and it's not. And so number 2 is correct, but number 1, you certainly can use sine or cosine because you do have enough information. The entire triangle actually is filled in. What you want to put for number 1 is that the biggest angle needs to be across from the biggest side, and that's not the case here. And likewise, the smallest angle should be across from the shortest side, and it's actually across from the longest side here. So those are 2 things that you could pick up that would be incorrect on this particular diagram. Now, I think I'm going to have to make a separate video for the second page because I forgot to, I don't think I can go back. Maybe I can. Just give me a minute and see if I can go back, and I'll put you on pause for a minute while I go back and see if I can load the second page. Alright, so I came up with a solution. I took a photo of the second page here, and I'm just going to go through this briefly with you. In the first case, you're using cos of 65. Now 65 is this angle here, which would mean that this side is the adjacent, not the opposite. Sorry, adjacent. And this one is right, that's the hypotenuse, but your ratio is going to be incorrect because you've used the wrong side for cosine. For the second question, you are trying to find, let me see, you're working from 52, and so you're using cosine should be adjacent over hypotenuse, and that's not x. So if you're using 52, you should be using sine, not cosine, because from the angle 52, this side is the opposite, which is x, and this side is the hypotenuse. So be very, very careful in how you're picking the sides for what you're trying to find here, okay? For number 2a, you have tan of theta equals, and you've got those reversed. You have 17.5 over 8.9, and what you really want is 8.9 over 17.5. You want opposite over adjacent. So again, you've got these sides mislabeled according to the angle. The adjacent side always touches the angle. The opposite side is always directly across from it, like that, okay? Number 2b, you certainly can solve that question. If theta is this angle here, then you're given adjacent and hypotenuse in this triangle, and so using cosine of theta would definitely let you solve for the unknown angle there. So for question 1 in part D, your diagram is excellent, and you have set this one up correctly. If the angle down here is 42, then this is the opposite. This is the adjacent, and that gives you tan. That gives you tan of 42, not tan of 48, equal to x over 15. So you've used the wrong angle, or you've mislabeled the sides there, and so you have to be careful in terms of what you're doing, okay? So 42 degrees, that makes this the opposite for 42, and this the adjacent for 42, so tan 42 would be x over 15. Tan 48 would be 15 over x, so just be careful. You seem to be having a little bit of trouble setting up your trig ratios. I wonder if you've spent enough time in Unit 2 on all of the practice questions on sine and cosine and tan. There's an awful lot of practice there with answers provided, and the fact that you're making these mistakes on the test is making me question whether or not you've spent enough time actually working through all of those questions and checking your answers as you go along, because that should have turned up. For the last question, you're to solve for x, and you're using sine of 42. That's correct. That's 7 over x, opposite over hypotenuse. And so that one actually is correct, and so you'll get full marks on that question. So please go back. Trigonometry is essential. It's just really, really important when you go on to grade 11 math. If you don't have a good basis for trigonometry, and this is just the right angle trig, you're going to be moving into the non-right angled trig in Unit 3, then you're really going to find grade 11 difficult. So I really need for you to slow down, take your time, make sure you learn this. If you have questions, that's what I'm here for. Just email me and I'll make you a video like this and go through whatever questions you're having trouble with. But you really need to make sure that you understand the material before you move on to the next unit.